tell me what this is.
Joy Behar was trying to say that I believe in dragons.
This guy, Joe Rogan, who believes in dragons.
He said, I checked it.
I checked it.
And the lady goes, did you double check it? She goes, I checked it. He believes in dragons.
Did you triple source that?
Yes, I did.
When you're worried about losing your job and you're worried about podcasts taking over and who's the source of news, and we said Donald Trump is Hitler, but half the country disagreed with us and he won, and this is okay, and Joe Rogan believes in dragons.
Welcome back to AllStarBuzz. Thank you for joining us. Joe Rogan finally responded to Joy Behar's claim that he believes in dragons, and his response is absolutely hilarious. He didn't hold back, and honestly, it's exactly what she deserved. But before we get into that, let's talk about Kamala Harris for a second. After spending $1.5 billion in 100 days, only to lose the election in embarrassing fashion and end up $20 million in debt, she's already considering running for president again in 2028. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. But before we dive into the video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and turn on those notification bells so you never miss a video. Now, let's get into this. First, I'm going to show you the clip from The View where Joy Behar tries to slander Joe Rogan with fake news, claiming he believes in dragons. Watch this.
But I think that that's why people like our show, because they know that we are checked by ABC News. But
We're checked by everybody.
Yeah, I mean, if we're wrong, we have, you know, the legal note here.
The human legal.
But we went from Walter Cronkite, basically, to this guy, Joe Rogan, who believes in dragons. I checked it. He believes in dragons? He believes in dragons.
Did you triple source that?
Yes, I did. And he also thinks that dragons, like, I guess, like dinosaur-y type of animals, roamed the earth when people did. So this is the type of really, really bad information that's going out there.
So after claiming that The View is a factual source of information because they're double-checked by ABC, Joy Behar goes on to make a claim that clearly wasn't checked by anyone. Why? Because it's totally out of context and not true in the slightest. But here's Joe Rogan's response to her nonsense, and it's gold. Watch this.
I had to read the thing about The View because I just thought it was funny.
What's
That's
The
the
View?
only reason why I read that about me.
Dragon lover.
It's the
wait, tell me
Joy
what this is.
Behar was trying to say that I believe in dragons.
Wait, what is this? I just
She
heard
said,
about
I checked it. And the lady goes, did you double check it? She goes, I checked it. He believes in dragons.
Should be like,
you think they lived
Sasquatch,
alongside of
bitch.
people? This is the most important part. This is right after she was saying, we are run by ABC News. You should trust us, not Joe Rogan, who believes in dragons. So she
What?
by saying we should trust them because they're double checked by ABC News, and then making the stupidest fucking statement. Like you didn't listen to what I said.
Yeah, it's completely hypocritical. Right before her statement about Joe Rogan, she says, "We're factual, we're checked, we're reliable. That's why you should believe what you hear on The View." And then, immediately after, she says something that's completely incorrect and could have been easily fact-checked. The irony is thick. Let's be real, this show is exclusively known for fear-mongering, lying, and being racially divisive at every turn. Meanwhile, Joe Rogan doesn't even claim to be a news source. He just talks to experts in different fields and often dives into philosophical, what-if kinds of conversations based on what those experts know. In that particular conversation, he was talking to a wildlife biologist. They were discussing how cultures from all over the world across different continents had consistent depictions of dragons. The question was, could these stories have been inspired by something real, like a giant alligator or a similar creature? But at no point did Joe Rogan say or declare with any factual evidence that dragons actually existed or that he believed in them. Now here's Joe Rogan giving the actual context of that conversation, something Joy Behar could have easily checked or had ABC fact-check, but she didn't. Why? Because she wanted to slander him as some conspiracy theorist running a far-right platform that pushes misinformation and shouldn't be trusted. Watch this.
My position is it's probably crocodiles or some big Komodo dragon or some big lizard that did kill people.
Touched one.
And so people fought them with swords and shit, and they came back with a story, and then the artist drew it. And these
Yeah, if you
things.
saw one of those at night and you had a stick, yeah, it'd be like,
All
I found a
throughout-
pterodactyl.
all
I
throughout
found a
these
picture
same
of Joe Rogan and a unicorn.
all throughout these same time periods, there's been giant lizards. All throughout these same time periods, there've been Komodo dragons. There've been crocodiles. Been here for fucking hundreds of million years or whatever they've been for. Probably
money.
more. So the idea that people didn't encounter giant reptiles is stupid. And then there's the other thing is like people were really bad at describing things that they'd never seen before. So if you're
Yeah.
a European traveler and you go to the Nile River and you see a fucking crocodile,
See a
like, what
crocodile
is that?
take a guy.
Yeah, what is
There you
that?
go.
The whole point of the dragon conversation wasn't to prove dragons are real. It was to explore how different cultures around the world all had similar depictions of giant flying lizards. But when you're one of the ladies on The View On, you know your ratings are tanking and your show is on the verge of cancellation. The only way to stay relevant is by trashing and discrediting your competitors. Pathetic. But Joe Rogan gives her one last piece of his mind because even he understands what's really going on. They're just trying to save face, save their careers, and keep their cushy jobs where they can lie, cackle, and have pointless conversations while pretending to be a legitimate news outlet. Watch this.
When you're worried about losing your job and you're
Yeah.
worried about podcasts taking over and who's the source of news and we said Donald Trump was Hitler but half the country disagreed with us and he won and this is fucking great and Joe Rogan believes in dragons. It's just frantic. It's
Bro,
foolish.
if you
I just want to say for the record, I have no hate for Joy Behar. If I saw her, I'd give her a hug. I don't care. I'd probably say the same thing about me if I was her. It's no big deal. I don't care. But it's a silly thing to say and it undermines your own personal credibility.
Yeah.
If you say we're so good because we're supported by ABC News, and then you say Joe Rogan believes in dragons in the next sentence.
And no chance she comes back and goes, oh, guys, I was wrong.
No
Somebody told me the
chance.
wrong
If
shit.
it was
Honestly, all Joy Behar did was shoot herself in the foot with that comment. And if The View were a flourishing show, it might not matter as much. But when you're on your deathbed, any little misstep could be the end of it. Speaking of shooting yourself in the foot, let's talk about Kamala Harris. Her campaign was a disaster. She just spoke for the first time since her embarrassing concession speech, and it was in a video where she clearly appeared to be drunk, high, or both. I did a video on that you guys can check it out if you want. It's hilarious and insane. But after that embarrassing blunder, losing $1.5 billion, ending up 20 million in debt, and getting completely swept in the election, somehow the Democrat Party thinks having her run again is a good idea. Listen to this Democrat strategist on MSNBC talking about what he thinks the future holds for Kamala's political career. Watch this.
What else can you report, I should say, about what the Vice President is planning to do as a second act?
You know, first she has to decide what to do, right? What we know is that over the holidays, both Thanksgiving when she was in Hawaii and then wherever she ends up going, spending time with family for Christmas, those are some of the conversations that they're going to have, both with family and senior aides and advisors. The very first step that she has to figure out is what does it look like to be her while Donald Trump is president again? If we remember, one of the reasons why she became so popular was because of her interactions in committee hearing rooms with Bill Barr or any other nominee from President Trump. So is she going to continue out of office being the tip of the spear of the resistance? Her speech yesterday to supporters and also her concession speech all kind of had the same theme, which is she's sticking around, which that's exactly what she's telling friends and allies that she's calling and thanking them for their support over the last few months. So that's step one. Then it's deciding what does the next part of her future look like. Is it political? Does she go and run a think tank? Does everything on the table? One thing that everyone is certain of that we talked to is that one, she's too young to leave political life, but they couldn't really figure out what the next step made the most sense. What's interesting is Harris is more popular now than she was before she ran for president. That's not something that typically happens. And when you talk to Democrats, not many of them are blaming her for the loss, right? They know that it was 107 days, and they nitpick about some of the other things, but it wasn't her as a candidate that they weren't impressed by. And so when you look at 2028 and the names that have kind of bounced around, she has the biggest name ID of any of them for obvious reasons. California governor, also on the table. She's wanted that job for a long time. It would be the most power that she's had in elected office, but there is the sense around some of her allies and aides that it might be a step back, right? Publicly, right? Her as vice president, almost being president, and then going back to be governor of a state. And that's one of the things that they're tussling with right now.
Personally, I was hoping we'd never have to see or hear from Kamala Harris again after this humiliating loss. But if she does want to stay in politics, I'm praying it's restricted to the state of California. Let them deal with her woke identity politics there. It doesn't need to infect the rest of the United States. I don't understand why they're still pushing the narrative that Kamala Harris was this perfect candidate who did everything she could in the short time she had and that it wasn't her fault she lost. Seriously? We all know, and the American people know, it was 100% her fault she lost. She was so unlikable, so inauthentic. Nobody actually supported her. It was all anti-Trump support. Her main campaign issue? Abortion rights. But here's the thing. Abortion had already been returned to the states. Even if she tried to recodify it as federal law, it never would have happened. Let's say Donald Trump had lost and she won. The Republicans still would have controlled the Senate and the House. That means her border bill would have been dead on arrival. Her abortion bill? Same thing. The issue she touted as her most important was something she could never deliver. It was all a sham. And honestly, I find it hilarious how they're acting like it's some kind of step back for her. She was vice president, almost became president, and now they're talking about her running for governor of California. That's not a step back, that's a massive political setback. She'd be going down the ladder, not up. And honestly, that's exactly what she deserves. In fact, the position of California governor is way more prestigious than she even deserves. She should have to start her career over as a local mayor or something and work her way up from there. But here's the real reason they're scared to have her run for governor. I think they know she'll lose. And if she loses again, it'll be the final nail in her political coffin. Let's not forget how Kamala Harris got to where she was. She didn't rise through the ranks because of her charisma, her policy ideas, or her ability to connect with voters. No, she was handpicked as a diversity hire. She was the first woman of color on the ticket, and that was supposed to be enough to win over voters. But guess what? It wasn't. Her campaign was a disaster from the start. She flip-flopped on every major issue, struggled to articulate a clear message, and came across as completely inauthentic. People didn't trust her, and for good reason. She was more interested in playing identity politics than actually addressing the issues that mattered to everyday Americans. And let's talk about her record. As vice president, she was given the huge task of handling the border crisis. How'd that go? Well, she didn't even visit the border until months into the crisis, and when she finally did, it was a complete PR stunt. She laughed off tough questions, blamed everyone else for the mess, and did absolutely nothing to fix the problem. It was a total failure. Then there's her infamous word salad moments. Whether she was talking about equity or systemic racism, she always managed to say a lot without actually saying anything. It was like she was reading from a script written by a woke think tank full of buzzwords, but devoid of substance. And people noticed. They saw through the act and realized she wasn't the leader they needed. Now, after all that, the Democrat Party is still trying to prop her up as a viable candidate. Why? Because they're desperate. They've tied themselves so tightly to identity politics that they can't let go, even when it's clear their strategy isn't working. They'd rather double down on a losing bet than admit they were wrong. But here's the thing. Kamala Harris isn't just a bad candidate, she's a liability. Every time she opens her mouth, she reminds people why they didn't vote for her in the first place. And if she runs for governor of California, it'll be the same story. She'll try to coast on her name recognition and identity politics, but it won't work. People are tired of the same old excuses and empty promises. So, what's next for Kamala? If she runs for governor and loses, it'll be the final nail in her political coffin. And honestly, that might be the best thing for the Democrat Party. They need to move on from failed candidates like her and start focusing on real solutions, not just identity politics. And that would be the most embarrassing part. Kamala Harris was picked as vice president because she was a DEI hire. She got the Democrat nomination because she was anointed, not because she earned it. She didn't win a single primary vote, got absolutely obliterated in the election, and has been exposed at every turn as incompetent and unlikable. I think they're terrified that if she runs for governor of California with all her name recognition and history and loses, she'd have to go into hiding and never show her face again. It'd be the final humiliation in a career full of them. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Should Kamala Harris run for president again in 2028? Personally, I love the idea it'd mean an easy win for the Republicans. Again, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and turn on those notification bells so you never miss a video. Catch you in the next one.